Got another twist in the race for the White House. Incumbent Joe Biden dropping out of the running. Joining us now to discuss what it could mean for the markets and the economy is Christian Medeiros, VP and Portfolio Manager for Asset Allocation at TD Asset Management. Christian, thanks for joining us on these fast-breaking developments. It's been quite a week, hasn't it?
Quite a week.
All right, so let's talk about what happens next. People know what has happened up till now. With Joe Biden saying, "I will not seek re-election," what happens next?
Yep. So what needs to happen in order to be the Democratic nominee and be on the ballot is that the Democratic National Convention on August 19th, they need to be elected by the majority of delegates to be that nominee for the party, and then they'll make it onto the ballot. So now with Biden stepping down, those delegates are no longer pledged to him. They become available to anyone else. But what's happened is Biden has endorsed Kamala Harris. Many people in the party have endorsed Kamala Harris. We're increasingly seeing state delegations follow up behind her. And others that may have challenged her, such as prominent governors such as Gretchen Whitmer or Newsom, have decided not to run in an open convention. So that means it's most likely that Kamala Harris will win those delegates on the convention day. That's probably the most likely path going forward. However, it's still possible. We still have a month until then. It's possible that the Democratic Party might want a more open convention with people challenging her, or maybe a mini primary. But those are less likely considerations.
All right, so if we do end up in a situation where it is Kamala Harris, what about policy positions? Would we think she would take much of a different track than Joe Biden has?
It's very likely that she's going to have a status quo and be very similar in policy priorities to Joe Biden. It's quite unlikely that she'd campaign on a different platform at this point. Furthermore, if she were to win the election, it's very unlikely, given the congressional math, that they'd have large majorities in the House or Senate. Very likely it would be a split Congress. In that case, even if she did have slightly different policy priorities, she wouldn't be able to pass them in the new government. So we think it's very unlikely that we have anything beyond status quo.
Let's talk a bit about that, because you brought up a very important point. We have been so, and for good reason, focused on the presidential contest. Now you have President Joe Biden saying, "I will not run for re-election." Is it Harris? Is it blah, blah, blah? There's going to be, come November, a presidential election, but also Congress, you mentioned there. This is pretty key, isn't it?
It's very key. I think it's one of the most important things to consider, because if you control Congress, you can pass legislation if you want. If you can't control Congress, it becomes tougher for the president. And so in this case, a big thing that forced Biden to resign was not only was his polling looking bad for himself and in key swing states, but was also looking very challenging for people down the ballot in key House and Senate races, which are so pivotal for Democrats this election cycle. And so that put a lot of pressure on him to resign. Now that he's off the ticket, it looks a lot better for those congressional candidates in House and Senate races, because Kamala Harris will be better at turning out the vote, and just because she doesn't have the same baggage about old age and concerns that a lot of voters had behind President Biden. So as a result, we might see better turnout for Democrats in those key races, which means it's more likely we have a split Congress, even if Trump were to win the election. It was looking like a sweep before, now a split Congress is back as a possibility, which means that he's not going to be able to do as much as he would have liked to do if he were to have swept Congress.
I was going to say, let's talk about former President Trump, obviously, because we've been so focused on the Democrat side with all these breaking developments. What are the implications here for his policy ambitions? We know that he's laid out certain things where we thought if he won the White House, then perhaps he'd put these into play, but now that's a little more in question.
Yeah, his three key priorities that we should watch are trade, immigration, and tax. Taxes are the big tax cuts he passed back in 2017. They need to be extended or made permanent this presidential cycle. And it's quite possible that if he doesn't have a sweep of both the House and the Senate, it'll be a lot harder for him to extend all those tax cuts. As a result, we might actually have some of those cuts expire, and therefore the average tax rates may go up in the US. So that's one thing to watch. It's not a done deal if he doesn't win all of Congress, that he can get that done. On trade and immigration, there's a lot of short-term measures he can do with executive action without Congress, so we still expect some of those to go through. And then just lastly, when it comes to repealing or undoing some of the Biden-era legislation, like the Inflation Reduction Act, things that he's done on climate, if Trump is unable to win the control of Congress, he won't be able to repeal some of that Biden-era legislation.
Now, obviously, it's a long road to November. A lot happened just in the past week. What are investors supposed to think about this? What's the implications for the markets?
Yeah, markets were feeling quite confident that Trump would not only win the presidency, but sweep Congress leading into Friday. And the election odds haven't changed too much. I think a little bit more in favor of Democrats, but Trump is still the leader. But I think what it does show to investors is we shouldn't be betting the farm on election outcomes 4 months before an election, if at all, because already in July we've had 3 or 4 October surprises. We've had a terrible debate performance by Biden. We've had an assassination attempt. We've had the incumbent drop out so late in the race. Really anything can happen, and we should be open-minded to a host of possibilities that could take place. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is that Biden was very constrained in his path to winning, just given the way the polling was trending, and the vast majority of Americans thought he was too old or incapable of taking office. now we're going to have a new candidate, won't have that baggage. It's possible the Democrats could do much better than people expect. So I think we have an open race. Democrats have a fighting chance, and it's going to make the election much more interesting going into that key date in November.